So I've owned this Yamaha R9 for about 2 months. I've done 524 miles on the clock. I've commuted with it, ridden it on the highway, took it out to a track day, and took it out to some of my favorite twisty roads. After spending some time with this motorcycle, I wanted to render my final opinion on it because it's changed a little bit since my first review. You guys might have seen our launch when we did this bike as our giveaway motorcycle. We did a nice 30-minute episode covering all the ins and outs, but some of the things have changed the more I've ridden this motorcycle. So in today's video, I'm gonna render a final verdict on this machine before we give it away, because today's actually the last day you have to enter to win it. Go to the website down below, check out the giveaway, and make sure you're locked in for this bike and the next bike we're doing right after it, because you're not gonna wanna miss it. Okay, so I put 524 miles on this motorcycle, did a bunch of stuff with it. What exactly has changed from my original opinion on it? I think the first thing I started to really consider about this motorcycle is, what does this thing do that an MT-09 SP doesn't do? And the only thing I can really come up with is that it is a fully fared bike. You know, looks cool, looks like a sport bike. It's a little bit better on the highway because there's a little more wind protection, but we're talking like 5 to 7% delta of what it does different over an MT-09 SP. And the fact the MT-09 SP is just as capable, if not more, on a fun back road, it's just as fun on a racetrack, costs less money, and is more comfortable to ride as a daily, I think I'd pick an MT-09 SP nearly every time over this motorcycle. The more I rode this machine, the more I kind of feel that it's kind of stuck in a weird in-between spot. Let me explain. The two main competitors to this motorcycle are the Kawasaki ZX6 and the Ducati V2. Both of those machines execute their missions slightly differently than the R9. And to me, the R9 is splitting the worst of both worlds from those machines. So this motorcycle is just as uncomfortable as something like a ZX6 or a prior generation R6, but it doesn't have the super sport thrills that those machines have. Whereas something like the Ducati Panigale V2, the new generation, is way more comfortable, and that's a really good thing. If we're trying to create a new generation super sport that's comfortable for the road and still track capable, I think the V2 just executes way better than the R9. The motor has just as much torque, it's just as much grunt. Some people kind of think of it as a naked bike engine. I mean, this literally is a naked bike engine. So the R9 is as uncomfortable as a ZX6, but not as exciting. And it has the same type of engine performance as the V2 without being as comfortable. So if I were to choose between those three bikes, the R3 would probably be my third pick. I would probably pick the V2 first, then the ZX6, then the R9, which pains me to say as a Yamaha enthusiast. What the R9 obviously does really well over the ZX6 is the fact that it has a pretty comprehensive tech suite, an excellent set of brakes, and a really willing torquey motor, and it can be coaxed to doing some pretty decent lap times. But this thing still needs a lot of setup and prep on track to be just as fun and capable as the Panigale V2. So I kind of feel like it's missing the mark a little bit. All that being said though, it's a solid machine with some excellent features for a great price point, and I think it's gonna make a lot of people really happy. It just probably wouldn't be my first choice for a middleweight sport bike. I think there's probably 2 or 3 other options I would pick instead. And I would pick those bikes based on if I'm gonna be spending a lot of time on track or on road, or if I'm gonna be splitting the difference between the two of them. To be honest, if you're looking at the R9, take a really long look at the Triumph Street Triple 765 RS, because spiritually, it fulfills the same mission as this bike. A torquey 3-cylinder motor, track-capable performance, everyday usability. I mean, this is a formula that Triumph has pretty much perfected over the last 20 years, and me personally, I probably would take a 765 RS Triple over the R9. So you guys probably think I'm just dunking all over this thing, but one thing I think the R9 does really well is it's a pretty comprehensive bike right out of the box. This motorcycle doesn't need a whole lot to make it really exceptional after you buy it off the showroom floor. The first thing I mentioned, and it just keeps coming back to me, is tires. You really want to spoon on a good set of rubber on this machine. Here in North America, it comes equipped with just the god-awful Bridgestone S22s, the OE spec tire. The S22 is a perfectly fine tire, but in OE spec, it's just awful for some reason. In Europe, they get the RS11s, which is an even better tire. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing is, of course, tank grips as well. Because this motorcycle is very aggressive when you sit in the saddle of it, you're sliding off the edge of it. You really want that nice positive hook on the outside whenever you're cornering, and having a good set of tank grips is gonna do that for you. The other super essential is a flash. I mean, this bike, the second gear dead spot is so noticeable that even if you're not that familiar with high-powered motorcycles, maybe this is your first bike you're jumping into as a higher-powered motorcycle. You're coming from an MT-07, an R3, you're jumping into the Yamaha R9. I mean, second gear is just dead. It doesn't have any rip off the go. And so for me, you gotta flash this thing. Just spend the time, pop the ECU out, send it to the boys over at Two Wheel Dyno Works, 350 bucks, get it back a week later, pop it in, totally different bike. We ended up leaving this bike completely bone stock because I want to make sure that the new owner, whoever wins the giveaway, can do whatever mods they want. If they don't like Two Wheel Dyno Works, they can send it to another tuner. If they don't like the tank grips I want to put on, they can put on a different set of tank grips. I really prefer to leave these bikes bone stock. That's all I would do to this bike. That's all it needs. The brakes feel great, the power's nice, the sound is good. It sounds really nice and throaty when you get it up in the rev range. It's got a nice induction note to it. And I really wouldn't do a whole lot else to it. Just tank grips, ECU flash, new tires, you're ready to rip for a long time. One of the main things I noticed with this bike the first time I got it was that the stock settings for the TC and the power, they're all basically useless unless you have full power and lowest intervention settings on everything. When I first fired this motorcycle up and took it out, I actually thought something was wrong with it because the response was so muted and so sluggish. I was like, oh, there's something wrong with this bike. Or I thought that the ECU flash was so necessary that it had literally no throttle response. So that was my preferred setting. I chucked it into highest power modes, lowest interventions, and I never had to change it beyond that because it was very manageable and easy to use. A lot of very high-powered motorcycles, you end up wanting to, kind of use a rain mode or something a little bit more docile for the street, and then you dial in a track mode. This thing with about 120 horsepower, it's more than happy to just have it all on the right wrist, and you're gonna have a great time with it. I do think this bike is a little quieter than it needs to be. Because the exhaust is a single welded system as well, if you want to make it louder, you either have to go crackhead mode and just start drilling holes, which I hope you are a reasonable adult, you're not going to be doing that to your brand new motorcycle, or swapping in a $1,600 full Akrapovic system. There really is no in between, and that kind of does suck. I do wish that Yamaha had some sort of, slip-on system you could put for this thing, make it a little bit louder, a little bit throatier, without having to spend a ton of money. The other strange thing about the R9 is that it is way faster than it feels. This was something that was kind of hard for my brain to get used to, but you're in this very committed sport bike position, and I've only started to realize this now with the new generation Super Sports, that my brain usually monitors the speed based on RPM and feel. Well, this thing doesn't rev out as much as a traditional sport bike, right? So you kind of have to retrain your brain a little bit, because if you start picking up the gas in third and fourth gear, all of a sudden you look down and you're like, Jesus, I'm doing 90 miles an hour. This thing very effortlessly picks up speed because it has a ton of power and torque low down in the rev range. So if you're coming at this from, let's say you're jumping from an MT-07, you jump on the R9, this thing is very serious. It can pick up a lot of speed right off the idle, right off the get-go. Third, fourth gear, you're cruising on your long sweepers, you just feed in the gas a little bit. It really picks up speed very quickly. There's no waiting for the power on the R9. And because it's kind of quieter stock, there was many times I looked down and I was doing damn near triple the speed limit. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even anticipate going that fast. So something to keep in mind with this bike. It's kind of a sleeper hit, kind of stealth in the way it picks up speed. So overall, after riding this bike over 500 miles, taking it on road, on track, highways, twisties, really getting to spend some time with it, I'd rate it a solid 7.5 out of 10. I think that revised down a little bit from my first initial rating on it. It's a great bike. It just isn't the first one I would reach for necessarily. I'd want something with a little bit more excitement or something a little bit different. Like I said, I would probably pick a ZX6 if I was gonna pick a Japanese motorcycle. And if I was just gonna go completely open, Triumph Street 77765, Ducati V2, even Aprilia RS660, those would all be above the R9 to me. I just think that they all offer something a little bit more unique and interesting. But the R9, super solid bike at a solid price point. If you love Yamaha, it's a really cool looking motorcycle, and it's definitely the one to get if you want the R bike styling. I think the R1 is just way too crazy for street riding. If you're a track guy, absolutely get the R1. It's a beast. It's gonna be so much fun to ride. But the R9, it really splits the difference. It's a great street bike. It's really usable. It's a little bit uncomfortable. The motor doesn't feel super special, but it's got a lot of character. The triple cylinder sound is really cool, and it's a great motorcycle. And like I said, the elephant in the room, the MT-09 SP is really a much more complete motorcycle to my eye. I think that it's just better executed. I remember when we had one in 24, the 2023 model, I really loved that bike. And it makes sense, right? Like, this started life as a street-oriented naked bike designed with torque first. When you take that package and reconfigure it into a sport bike, you know, you're compromising a little bit, right? Like, yes, this has a bespoke frame, but it really is the engine. It always comes down to the engine. That's why I think the V2 is a little bit more special. It's why I think the ZX6 is a little bit more interesting. And it's why ultimately I wouldn't necessarily pick the R9 over any of those. So that's gonna wrap up my thoughts on the Yamaha R9. What do you think? I tried to be as thorough as possible with this bike, put on a ton of miles with it, really enjoyed it. I'm very excited for the next giveaway bike. This is a super hyped up motorcycle that everybody's been talking about. A lot of people claiming it as a sort of 10 out of 10 motorcycle, excellently executed. And there's a really weird plot twist we're gonna have to talk about when that bike goes live, because it's probably not what you're expecting based on what I've been hyping up here on the channel. Remember, today is the last day. Head over to gaming.co, support the show, and get entered to win this R9. Today's the very last chance you have to get entered to win. Appreciate you watching. I will catch you in the next one. See you later.